Hey guys, and welcome to Table Talk Tokyo. Today I've got Craig Humble. He's a Canadian living here in Tokyo. He is a banker and a competitive bodybuilder. And I've known Craig for a while through a mutual friend named James Davis. But I don't really know the details of his journey. So I'm really excited to, Craig, bring you on today and actually figure out how it is you went from living here in Tokyo, working as a banker, to continuing to work as a banker, but now also competing as a professional bodybuilder, right? Maybe amateur professional bodybuilder.
Yeah, not professional yet, but
Trying to get the pro card.
I haven't given up hope yet. No.
Okay, so how did you get involved in fitness?
So just before I came out to Japan for the first time was actually my first sort of foray into bodybuilding. So,
Okay.
I was just doing that to stay in shape and whatnot. And
When you
I
say
had gone
foreign bodybuilding, you mean like you were going to the gym and training?
going to the gym and training. And the reason why I say bodybuilding there is because I was buying the bodybuilding mags and I was so before I came to Japan was the first time I ever tried to bulk up. Right?
Okay.
So I ate my face off, right? And totally the wrong way, right? In retrospect, but whatever, right? Like, I was driven at the time and that was what I was going to do. So I did that and then, came to Japan. And then when I came to Japan, I was at the time I was receiving about $700 a month as a part of the scholarship, right?
Okay.
So that was what I had to live off. And gym memberships at that time were like $150 a month, right?
Okay.
As you'll remember.
Yeah.
Until sort of Anytime came out 5-10 years ago that the prices started to come down, right?
Gold's Gym still rocking the 100.
Yeah, I know, right?
$150.
So yeah, and I was paying $20 a month back in Canada, right? So
man, and Planet Fitness states $10 a month.
Just shocking. But then, of course, when I started in banking, there was no time for anything, so everything kind of fell to the wayside. 2007 comes along, Bear Stearns starts to get into trouble. Financial crisis. At that time, I was trading interest rate options.
Okay.
So very susceptible to the moves that were happening overnight.
Yeah.
So when I would roll over in the middle of the night and check out where where the Dow was or something, and then find out it's 700 points down or something, cue panic, right? Cue not going back to sleep. So I thought, okay, well, what are we going to do with ourselves now that I'm getting up at 4 a.m? I thought, well, I'll start training again. So, I started out basically, I would say in terms of like when the real sort of fitness journey up to this point started, I would put that as the start date, sort of.
Okay, so this is 2007 as a result of literally waking up early.
Yes.
And like panicking because of the Dow Jones just plummeting.
Yes. Because of the great financial crisis. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's kind of the start of it. I started there and then started training in the mornings. And obviously that had benefits in terms of, you get a lot of the stress out in the morning before you actually get to the office. You can think a little more clearly, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And just getting back into the gym felt really, really good. It was something that, I missed a lot. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So started there. And then from there, as the, after the whole sort of the initial, gains, for lack of better expression, the initial sort of changes, once those started to slow down, then I started to think, well, what if I watch my nutrition a little bit? So then I started to experiment with a whole bunch of, different approaches to diet and stuff, because I remembered that before I came to Osaka and I started to really increase my caloric intake, that made a really big difference on my body.
Yep.
So I started to pay a little bit more attention to nutrition and stuff around about 2008, sort of late 2008. And then went through like sort of a full bulking cycle, cutting cycle, bulking cycle, cutting cycle, that kind of thing, just to see sort of, how things would work. Everything was working pretty well. And I continued on that path. In terms of training, my training was kind of all over the map though. I wasn't really bodybuilding specific. In terms of training, I was focused a lot more on strength, because a lot of the stuff that you read on the internet was always like, oh, you have to work on your big three and what's that program? 5x5.
5x5. Yeah. Classic 5x5.
Starting strength and
Yeah.
5-3-1, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I was working through all of those, right? And they're all great programs, right?
Yeah.
For what they are, but
Totally
they're
agree.
not really bodybuilding specific, which I found out after, right?
Yeah.
Basically, I found myself at, being 140 pounds and able to, deadlift a lot, right?
Yeah.
But I was still 140 pounds, and that wasn't really what I wanted to do, right? So, anyways, I've kind of digressed a little bit there, but the training part was kind of all over the map, but the nutrition thing worked that in, and then basically in 2014, a buddy of mine from Australia said, let's go to the Mr. Olympia. And that's something that I always wanted to see. So I went to the Mr. Olympia and, to go watch that. That's the biggest bodybuilding show on earth, for those that don't know, right? And the winner is, the former winners are like, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Dorian Yates,
the big
all of those guys.
Yeah.
The creme de la creme. And we went there and we had an absolute riot. It was so much fun, I like, we got to go, we kind of bucked up, right, for the package, right? And so we got like a tour of the backstage. I actually got to stand on the Olympia stage, all of this kind of stuff, right? And it was really cool to see all the, the tanning booths and the pump up rooms and all that kind of stuff. And then when I met all of these people, the thing that really, really struck me and said, hey, this is something I want to do, was everyone was super cool. Yeah. And they were super nice and encouraging. And it was such a far departure from what I had expected from the bodybuilding community. Because of course, the image that I had, much like everyone else's, a bunch of juiced up, roid rage monkeys, right? Who are just, not, who are just basically, the type of people that you associate with that, right? Not most savory types. Yeah. However, I couldn't have been more wrong. Like, and it wasn't correlated with size at all either. You had guys that were 300 pounds ripped, who were just the gentlest, nicest, like, oh, dude, that's great, you're starting out, like, just so encouraging and so positive. Yeah. That it really, really changed my perspective.
What's your favorite part about the industry?
My favorite part, well, as I said, it was that encouragement and positivity,
like kindness,
right? Yeah, it was just so different from what I had expected, because I had expected everyone to be sort of arrogant douchebags, and nobody was like that. Yeah, right. It's a much more supportive and encouraging community than I ever would have guessed. And that's not only applicable to the professionals. That's like when you talk about your fellow competitors when you're backstage. Everyone's helping each other out. There's no like sitting there, making stink eye at the other guy type of thing, right?
I would agree with you. Everyone I know who's involved in the industry, they're 100% okay sharing everything they know about the industry with others, because everything that they've taken years and years to learn, they like want others to know, because they just want to share that with others. Like, no, this is my favorite, whatever. Like, I recommend this. This is how I do this. So I completely agree with you.
Well, that's the thing too, is it's not just a, there's no secret. Yeah, exactly. Right? None whatsoever. And like, if anything, it's sort of the cumulative effort and sort of constant incremental improvement that that gets you to the point, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I think the case when people ask you the basics, like, somebody comes back from around Christmas time, they're like, all right, it's a new year. Craig, what do I do? Like, what do you tell that person?
Yeah, so I am willing to help anyone that wants to improve, just because, as I said, there are a billion variables and a billion things that you need to learn before you become sort of exceptional. So I'm not really worried that if I tell you how to diet, that you're going to surpass me in the bodybuilding world, right? So with that in mind, it's it really just depends, right? Yeah. So I think with the most important thing that I try to tell people is that a plan that you can adhere to 90% of the time for a long time will get you much further than something that you go balls out on for 3 months and then quit. Yes. Right. And that can be very hard. Yeah. Because I think that, especially with body composition, it's something that does take time. And also, it probably doesn't help that people see me put on 40, 50 pounds in the course of a year and then take 40 off.
Exactly. exactly.
Okay, so just a second.
No, you're good. You're good. So then I think part of your answer right now is alluding to the fact that it's very specific to the person and probably their goals, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the thing is too, is it's kind of like what people are prepared to put into it,
Yeah.
what they want to focus on,
Yeah.
etc. All of that stuff is different. So if you have somebody who doesn't mind feeling a little hungry, then it's not going to be hard to help them lose weight.
Yep.
Right. If you have somebody that, you know, doesn't really like to eat that much and wants to put muscle on, like, again, that's another problem, right? So,
exactly. Yeah.
But then you also have people that want to train, people that don't want to train.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, it really depends on the individual. So, you know, if it's somebody that doesn't really want to train, then we'll start off with nutritional stuff first. If it's somebody that doesn't want to do the diet stuff, then we'll start out with training first, right? The key thing is for them to see some results. And
then get
start
excited.
To find the joy in what they're doing.
Exactly.
Right. Because it's not a slog, right? Like if bodybuilding and everything that I put into it made me miserable, there's no way that I could dedicate as much of my life to it as I do, right? And that's the same thing with anyone, right? Like it's much easier to, in my personal case, when I was starting out, it was much easier to start looking at the nutrition once I had sort of, you know, gone as far as I could with the training and realized that stuff was starting to get in the way, right? And then when I started to change my nutrition and then seeing the increase in performance in the gym, that was motivation to me, right? So, I mean, you know, everyone's got to kind of have those moments, but I think that what comes first just kind of depends on the person.
You know, when somebody says like, oh, I want to lose weight, I feel like, and I'm the same way. The first thing I say is like, well, what's your goal? Like, why do you want to lose weight? Like, what are you trying to do? The person might be like, I want to get beach ready. Be like, okay, what does that mean to you? It's like, oh, I want to get rid of my belly fat. And then I kind of I feel like I have to incrementally get at what they actually want to do. And then based on whatever that is, like, then this is the simple plan for doing it. Like, oh, I want to lose a bunch of fat mass. Like, are you interested in building muscle? Like, yeah, I want to do that too. Like, okay, what's your time frame? I've got like, well, you've got a wedding in June.
8 weeks.
What's up?
8 weeks.
8 weeks. Yeah, exactly. Well, what I want to try to do is put in perspective for others who might see what you do and think it's like unachievable or unattainable or unrealistic, and kind of try to demystify that a little bit, if that can be demystified. So maybe an easy way to start is like your day to day. Again, you work as a banker, which means you've got pretty solid set hours each day. How do you fit in the training you do into your schedule?
Okay, sure. So the one thing that's very easy for me to control being based here in Tokyo is my start time.
Okay.
If the market's not open, then I can't train. It's that simple. So the market doesn't open until 8:30.
Yep.
So that means that I'm basically totally free until 8:30 a.m.
Okay.
In terms of when I finish work, that's a little more difficult, especially in the context of working in an international bank, because a lot of times London will come in. When London comes in, then the phones start ringing, meetings get scheduled, et cetera, et cetera. So it's difficult to have a predetermined end time to your day. So because I have control over the start time and not the end time, that tells me that if I want to train and make training a priority, that's just something that I have to do before before work starts. So it sounds a little extreme, but I get up at 4:15 in the morning, right? And then I'll have a pre-workout drink, not necessarily a meal. I train fasted though, so this isn't like it's not a shake with oats and whey or something like that. It's just more like an actual pre-workout that's like filled with citrulline, arginine, that kind of stuff.
So just to be clear, this is like basically water with a scoop of pre-workout.
Yeah, a scoop of pre-workout, just to get the brain firing fast enough. And then I'll go and I'll train. When I'm training, I'll have, I usually, in the off season anyways, I'll have some sort of like carbohydrate powder in the intra-workout drink that I have, along with some EAAs. Which helps to prevent catabolism and all that. Right? Not BCAAs, EAAs, right? Because apparently BCAAs are no good anymore, they say. So, and then following that, I'll generally training takes me about 90 minutes.
Okay.
And then I'll have a little bit of cardio after.
Okay.
Usually, even in the off season, I'll do like 12 minutes. Right now in competition prep, obviously there's a lot more.
Yep.
So generally spend about 2 hours in the gym, we'll say.
Okay.
Right? So that's sort of, if I'm up at 4:15, I'm in the gym probably 4:30.
Yep.
And there till 6:30, then come home, shower, get ready, eat breakfast with the family, head to work, get to work, start work at about, I get in about 8, so start there, and then work till whatever it is, 6, 7. I will have 4 meals at work. So I'll have one at about 9 o'clock, one at 11:30, another one about 2, and then another one sort of like 4:30 or 5.
These are relatively, I mean, assuming you're like, it depends on your season, obviously, but in terms of what you pack, it's some kind of bento thing.
Yeah, type of thing. I mean, we'll use the easy example right now because I'm in prep, so there's not that much. So it would be like, for example, 150 grams of chicken, and then like a handful of broccoli, and then maybe we'll be generous and say I get a whole 75 grams cooked of rice, right? Which is about half of an onigiri type size, right? So not that much, but yeah, so just basically like that kind of meal is what I'm eating right now in the context of trying to lose weight. In the off season, it's more like 150 to 200 grams of chicken, and then like 300 grams of rice. Right. And then maybe some nuts or something.
So the biggest, and this might be an interesting point here. So it seems like one of the biggest differences, to just focus on your diet, is not so much eating a ridiculous amount of protein off season versus on season. It seems like the big difference is in the carbohydrate load.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's all about carbohydrates.
I feel like that's a key. I feel like that's a key point for people to
understand. Yeah, no, I mean, the protein has to stay pretty consistent, right? Because in the off season, you want to have the excess protein in your system so that you are maximizing your muscle protein synthesis and able to replenish. Because and this was a really important point that actually Milos Sarcev had brought up in a seminar that I attended. But protein and muscle is the only tissue that really needs to be like constantly turns itself over. So if you're not ingesting enough protein, then what happens is your muscle, when it breaks down, is just not going to get replaced. So that's why protein is the ultimate
muscle
building block and the most important macro for somebody that's looking to maintain muscle mass. So whether you're talking about when you're trying to build it, you want to have extra in your system to make sure that you have enough to replace and repair all of the damage that you've done to your muscles through your training. In the off season, you want to make sure that your body is preserving the lean muscle mass as much as possible. So you want to have extra protein then too. So so net that means that you just basically want to have a lot of protein all the time, right?
But the variable,
of course, in the context,
adjusting variable then is the carbohydrate side. That's what
the major one is the carbohydrates. Yeah, for sure. So to compare and contrast. So if we just look at my medium caloric intake days, in the off season, that's generally 5,000 calories for me. And then in the current cutting season, I'm on about 2,000, and that's pretty much all from carbohydrates. Right. So
and
I mean, there's some fats as well, but
I feel like that distinction is huge, because when your average person comes to you and says like, hey, I want to lose weight, especially for me, somebody says, I want to lose, I mean, it could be anything. It could be somebody says I want to lose 10 kg. It could be somebody who says like, I need to lose 40 kg. I'm 120 kg, 5'11". I know that I should be around 80 kg and I need to get this weight off. And then, the question is like, what do I do? Fundamentally, it's like, okay, well, we're going to have to, over time, we're going to have to just bring down the total calories you're taking in each day. And the way in which that probably makes most sense to do is to just take a look at the whole spread and see what changes we can make. And there's all kinds of ways of approaching it. Whether if you're eating lots of processed food, it could be a changes there. If there, who knows what the change would be. But in general, it's like we're probably gonna need to consume a little bit less over time. And it seems like it makes most sense to make that reduction would be from probably carbohydrates, and then depending on what their fat intake looks like, possibly from that as well.
The two sort of lowest pieces or lowest hanging pieces of fruit I find tend to be people that drink too many calories.
Yes.
And whether that is in the form of alcohol or whether it's in the form of
Frappuccinos,
lattes and frappuccinos, right? That's a very easy one to instantly knock down your caloric intake.
Yeah.
And then the other one is sauces, right? Sauces isn't so much of a problem.
Sauces. Yes.
Not so much of a problem here in Japan.
Yeah.
But back home, like obviously, if you barbecue saucing everything, like that's a lot of calories there.
Yeah.
Or gravy on them. Well, I mean, you shouldn't really be eating gravy and fries if you're trying to lose weight. But that's I mean, just a lot of dense caloric sauces out there. Yeah.
I'm gonna put it out today, but I just finished a YouTube video on convenience store food, and one of the little things that I got was these like vegetable sticks.
Yep.
And when you read the nutrition facts in the back, it's like, I don't know, proteins, maybe 2 grams of protein, fat is 15 grams of fat, and then carbohydrates is like 5 or something. And you look at that and you're like, 15 grams of fat in this little thing of well, how's that possible? And then you realize that the thing of the dressing.
Goma dressing.
Yeah, the dressing. You're like, that's the dressing, like all of that.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Totally agreed. And then fat's just so calorie dense, like that ends up being a lot of calories in a little pack of.
Yeah, that's why I think it can be kind of dangerous when people when people get attracted. And I think that's also what the attraction is to the keto diet.
Yeah.
Is that people sit there and think, okay, well, I can just eat this all day and eat all the fat I want. I can have bacon all day and stuff like that. But it's a little more complex than that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love it.
At the end of the day, like, I don't think that there's any question about if you're talking about weightlifting performance anyways, or any sort of explosive performance-based sport, you need carbohydrates as an energy source.
Yes.
It's just that simple.
Yes. So then I guess to kind of like in summary, what would be one piece of advice, and what would be the most relevant piece of advice? We're both based in Japan. We both live in Tokyo. You work with a bunch of people, some who are domestic Japanese, some who are expats. I work largely with expats who are here. I assume our circles are largely expat circles. What piece of advice would you give to, like, and again, this is less specific, but to expats as a whole who are based here in Tokyo, who are interested in improving, like living more healthy lives, to keep that really broad and vague? And again, I know it's difficult because like, it depends on the person and all that, but if it were possible to kind of just blanket statement.
I mean, it's not just, it wouldn't just be applicable to expats. It's really applicable to anyone. And that's that. I didn't just wake up one day and decide that I'm going to train for 2 to 3 hours a day, that I'm going to eat 6 meals, that I'm going to take all of these, fish oil and multivitamins and blah, blah, blah. And all of this stuff. I didn't decide to do that one day and just turn it on, right? That's from building habits over the course of the time that I've been involved in. I'm 13, 14 years this time around, right, into it. So the key thing is just to try to make incremental improvements each and every time, right? And it doesn't have to be one a week. It can be an incremental, like they say that it takes 2 or 3 weeks to build a habit, right? So use that as a guide. Try to improve one thing, do it consistently for 2 weeks. And then after that, if you're ready for a new challenge, then start on something different, right? Not necessarily different, but continue to build upon what you've already built. Yes, exactly. And that is the single biggest thing. I think that so many people, especially in today's I want it now, results now type society, miss the process. But in fact, it's the process where all of the learning and all of the interesting stuff actually comes along, right? The reason why there's no single book is because there are so many factors involved in everything that there's, even 13, 14 years in, it's very easy to find things that I can still continue to improve. Like, for example, this prep is actually one of the best preps that I've had. And that's because I've discovered a whole bunch of things that you know, that I tried to change from learning from my previous preps that, you know, I've got, that I've been able to address this time. And it's, you know, it's actually, it's kind of like, I always hate using my own name, but it's very humbling, right? When you know, have been doing something for so long, yet you can still continue to learn and feel like you don't know anything, you know, as this process goes on, right? So, you know, it's really, and that was kind of like, a lot of the times I was always a little bit reluctant to call things a fitness journey or something like that, right? Because it sounds so cliche, but it is in fact really that, because it's all about the incremental improvement along the way. And then eventually, you know, at some point you wind up and you're a totally different person from where you were, you know, 10 years ago or whatever.
Have you read Atomic Habits?
Have I read who?
Atomic Habits. It's by James Clear.
No, I haven't.
You got to read Atomic Habits. I feel like what you've just said now about incremental gains being the key to long-term success, the entire book is about exactly that. I feel like it would be something that would help you, not even help, not that you need help, but it may help even further contextualize that concept, because that's like the guiding concept for what it is I do as a coach, as a health coach with the clients I work with, is just to recognize that it's not some, now we're going 110%. No, it's like, okay, what are you doing right now? This is what I'm doing. Like, great. We're going to change like just this one thing. Like, how does that sound? Like, that's easy. Great. Just do that for this first week. I don't want you to do anything else. I don't want you to track your calories. I literally just want you to like pay attention to how you eat, like be more mindful. And it seems ridiculous, but over time, just like you said, you'll look back 4 weeks in, 6 weeks in, 8 weeks in, and be blown away by the incremental changes that have occurred over that time. And it's much easier, much more sustainable. And I think just much more effective to go about it that way.
It's more rewarding too, right? Because you sit there and you build these senses of accomplishment. And that's the thing that I like about training, right? And progressive resistance in terms of, you know, as a training philosophy.
Progressive overload.
When you're sitting there and you get that extra rep, or you use a little more weight, and that's a victory, right? And that's also why I preach you have to use a logbook when you train, if you're training for, you know, because you have to sit there and you have to go, last week I got this week I'm going to get this come hell or high water, right? And you know, and that it's that building those little tiny successes that you build up over every day. That's what helps to give you that sense of well-being that makes the quality of your life that much better.
And I completely agree with the sentiment that it's the feeling of succeeding, even if it's this much, that really helps push you to the next stage and push you to the next stage and push the next stage. And then eventually you're at this place that's completely different than where you started, but you really can't effectively, I would say most people, because I don't want to say can't, because there are people who actually can. I think most people would struggle to take a more Tony Robbins massive action and impact like effect and actually stick with it. That can work in the short run, but most people tend to make that jump and then they regress because it's just, it's like such a big leap. But I think if you can just make, and again, I love Tony Robbins. I'm a fan of massive action. I just think for most people, it's more applicable to just make really small, gradual, incremental changes. And over time, it will result in massive results.
One thing that I have noticed is in my industry, of course, the perception of Wall Street and banking for the last 30, 40 years has always been sort of a work hard, party hard type of environment. But I've really noticed a shift in sort of the past 5 years in particular, where people have started to move much more into, you know, a more, I would say, wellness based, or like a little bit, like a lot more concerned about their health. And, you know, maybe instead of going out and getting smashed with clients, like, why don't we go out and, you know, hit the gym? Like, so literally most of my client entertainment in the past couple of years has actually been me training clients in the gym.
That's amazing.
No word of a lie. So, you know, I think that this is really cool, and we're at a really cool time in I don't know what the age, or, you know, but I really feel like there's some sort of like cosmic shift that's actually happening here, where people are starting to pay more attention to this, and it's really exciting. And I think the message that I would want to say to anyone is that it's totally possible and it's totally achievable, right? just because you don't become a competitive bodybuilder, if that's what you want to do, or a professional yogi or whatever it is, in the span of 6 months, does not mean that you won't be sitting there in 4 or 5 years going, how the hell did I get here? If you start today, right? And if you start, as we said, with those, very incremental changes, you'll be surprised how many of those incremental changes you can rack up over time and wind up being, completely where you want to be. But it's just, it just takes time, patience, and persistence, right?
Craig, I love it. And like everything you've said, everything you just said right now in summary is yes. Complete alignment. I love it, man. Thank you for making time to do this. And honestly, this is wonderful. I'm really happy we finally had a chance to actually
thank you very much for having me. It's great. And yeah, I mean, going forward, if there's anything, any other questions or whatever, or
I will be reaching out again.
A specialty on bodybuilding or something, I'm happy to answer some questions there too.
I love it. Craig, thank you, man. So guys, thank you for watching. Craig, again, thank you for joining me. And if you guys haven't already, please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notifications button on this video if you're interested in more videos like this. We'll see you next time. Craig, this is wonderful. We'll speak again soon, and thank you.